Words of Sri Aurobindo. Topic: Ardent Aspiration. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the development of the experience in its rapidity, its amplitude, the intensity and power of its results depends primarily in the beginning of the path and long after on the aspiration and personal effort of the sadhaka. The process of yoga is a turning of the human soul from the egoistic state of consciousness absorbed in the outward appearances and attractions of things to a higher state in which the transcendent and universal can pour itself into the individual mold and transform it. The first determining element of the Siddhi, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo, the first determining element of the Siddhi is therefore the intensity of the turning, the force which directs the soul inward. The power of aspiration of the heart, the force of the will, the concentration of the mind, the perseverance and determination of the applied energy are the measure of that intensity. The ideal sadhaka should be able to say in the biblical phrase, "My zeal for the Lord has eaten me up." It is this zeal for the Lord, Utsaha, the zeal of the whole nature for its divine results, Vyakulata, the heart's eagerness for the attainment of the divine, that devours the egos and breaks up the limitations of its petty and narrow mold for the full and wide reception of that which it seeks, that which, being universal, exceeds, and being transcendent, surpasses even the largest and highest individual self and nature. Words of our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother says, all is mute in the being, but in the bosom of the silence burns the lamp that can never be extinguished, the fire of an ardent aspiration to know and to live integrally the divine. If in man the seed of aspiration is watered with the true spirituality, then he will grow into divinity. Let me repeat. If in man the seed of aspiration is watered with the true spirituality, then he will grow into divinity. Our Divine Mother says, let your aspiration leap forward, pure and straight, towards the supreme consciousness, which is all joy and all beatitude. We must always aspire to be free from all ignorance and to have a true faith. The urge of aspiration, nothing is too high, nothing too far for its insatiable ardor. When the aspiration is awake, each day brings us nearer to the goal. Aspiration is always good, and if some demand is mixed up with it, you can be sure that it will not be granted. True aspiration is not a moment of the mind but of the psychic. Beyond words, above thoughts, the flame of an intense aspiration must always burn steady and bright. The flame of aspiration must be so straight and so ardent that no obstacle can dissolve it. Next topic, how to make one's consciousness vast. Question, sweet mother, how can we make our consciousness vast? For this, our Divine Mother says, vast There are many ways of doing this. The easiest way is to identify yourself with something vast. For instance, when you feel that you are shut up in a completely narrow and limited thought, will, consciousness, when you feel as though you were in a shell, then if you begin thinking about something very vast, as for example the immensity of the waters of an ocean, and if really you can think of this ocean and how it stretches out far and far and far in all directions like this, and our Divine Mother stretches her arms, how compared with you it is so far that you cannot even see the other shore, you cannot reach its end anywhere, neither behind nor in front, nor to the right nor to the left. It is wide enough. You think of this and then you feel that you are floating on the sea like that, and there are no limits. This is very easy. This is very easy because you can then widen your consciousness a little. Other examples is our Divine Mother. Begin looking at the sky and then imagine all those spaces between all those stars and all that kind of infinity of spaces in which the earth is a tiny point and you too are just a very tiny point, smaller than an ant on the earth. And so you look at the sky and feel that you're floating in these infinite spaces between the planets, and that you are growing vaster and vaster to go farther and farther. Some people succeed with this. Our Divine Mother says there is a way also by trying to identify yourself with all the things upon earth. For example, when you have a small narrow vision of something and are hurt by others' vision and point of view, you must begin by shifting your consciousness, try to put it in others, and try gradually to identify yourself with all the different ways of thinking of all the others. This is little more, how shall I put it, dangerous, because to identify oneself with the thought and the will of others means to identify oneself with a heap of stupidities, and our Divine Mother laughs, and bad wills, and this may bring consequences which are not really very good, but still some people do this more easily. For instance, when they are in disagreement with someone, in order to widen their consciousness, they try to put themselves in the place of others and see the thing not from their own viewpoint but from the point of view of the other. This widens the consciousness, though not as much as the first ways I spoke about, which are quite innocent. They don't, do any harm? They don't do any harm. They do you much good. They make you very much peaceful. Our Divine Mother says there are lots of intellectual ways of widening the consciousness. These I have explained fully in my book, but in any case, when you are bored by something, when something is painful to you or very unpleasant, if you begin to think of eternity of time and the immensity of the space, if you think of all that has gone before and all that will come afterwards, and that this second in eternity is truly just a passing breath, and that it seems so utterly ridiculous to be upset by something which in the eternity of time is one does not even have the time to become aware of it. It has no place, no importance, because what indeed is a second in eternity? If one can imagine, to realize that, visualize that, picture the little person one is in the little earth where one is the tiny second of consciousness which for the moment is hurting you or is unpleasant for you, just this which in itself is only a second in your existence, and that you yourself have been many things before and will be more things afterwards, and that affects, and that what affects you now will have probably completely forgotten in 10 years. Or if you remember it, you will say, how did I happen to attach any importance to that? If you can realize that first, and then realize your little person, which is a second in eternity, not even a second, imperceptible, a fragment of a second in eternity, that the whole world has unfolded before this and will unfold yet indefinitely before, behind, and that, well, then suddenly you sense the utter ridiculousness of the importance you attach to what happened to you. Truly, you feel to what an extent it is absurd to attach any importance to one's life, to oneself, and to what happens to you. And in the space of 3 minutes, if you do this properly, all the unpleasantness is swept away. Even a very deep pain can be swept away. Simply a concentration like this, and to place oneself in infinity and eternity. Everything goes away. One comes out of it cleansed. One can get rid of all attachments, and even I say of the deepest sorrows of everything in this way. If one knows how to do it in the right way, it immediately takes you out of all your little ego, and there we are. Our Divine Mother says, do not let yourself be overwhelmed by the sense of vastness, bathe in it. Rather, with joy and serenity, we are where we can find inescapably within the four walls of our personal consciousness. That would indeed be sad and overwhelming, but the infinite is open to us. We have only to take a plunge into it. These are the words of our Divine Mother.